Hi, I'm Roy, and this is Yard of Random Books. You might see if you go to the channel page, I've created a spiffy new graphic header for the channel. But for the intro slide, it's still this. There you go. So, here's the thing. I bought a bunch of shabby chic decoration only books. Junk hardbacks, really, so old that nobody wants them, but I'm reading them anyway and redeeming them from their junk status, which has been fun, but some are more interesting than others on the face of it. And in particular, the Principles of Bankruptcy Law I thought might present a challenge in proving my idea that any book, no matter how unwanted, has something interesting about it. I think in terms of unwanted books, textbooks, particularly out of favour, obviously, because knowledge moves on, so who wants the old stuff? And legal ones in as well. You particularly don't want to be trying to work to some outdated legal stuff. Let's say you're bankrupt and you want to figure out what to do. Do you get the latest info, or do you spend 30p on a book from the late 1970s and hope for the best? Probably you'd be better off with the modern book. And I think whoever wanted 30 pence for it was being optimistic in terms of its value. So I've ended up with it. I've been wondering what to do with it. Had thought perhaps the only interesting thing I can do is rip the pages out, make it into a notebook. But even then, a, a bankruptcy book feels like a bit of a downer for carrying around and putting one's thoughts into. So yeah, I've ended up thinking really the thing to do is to transform the text in some way to extract what must be the hidden interest within it. I had found in Modern French for Adults there was interesting stuff, because there were words and phrases and text in that that turned out to be bizarre and kind of funny and kind of interesting. Uh, Not so in Principles of Bankruptcy Law, where it's a little bit interesting how legal language works and how it's very precise, but it's not a barrel of laughs. There's nothing very unexpected in this book. So just taking the words as they're written wasn't really getting me anywhere. Um, some sort of creative technique could possibly be used to transform these words into something else. There's the cut up technique of popularized by William Burroughs, used by people like David Bowie. Perhaps I could be cutting the pages up with scissors and combining them with something else, though that felt like a little bit clumsy maybe. There is something called the spoonbill method, where to transform a piece of text into something strange and different, you replace each word with another word from a set number of places further along in the dictionary. So basically, you find your word in the dictionary, you count down by a number, and that's your new word. And there's actually a tool on the web where you can paste in text and it does that for you. So I have actually used that. I was writing a poem about experiences during lockdown. Part of it was talking about television programs that we'd been watching and films and series of films, and I didn't want to just use the bare titles. I kind of wanted to move it sideways. So using this spoonbill method, for instance, Sea Patrol became Seance Pavilion, like the one Michelle went to. Star Trek becomes Stateroom Triad. The Next Generation becomes The Nice Gentlewoman. The Motion Picture becomes The Motorcycle Pierrot. And I quite want to see a film in the Stateroom Triad series about a motorcycle Piro, and so on. You get the idea, or not, but you know, it's a thing. Doing that to this, okay, counting along from bankruptcy, got to Banshee. Well, Banshee is a bit more interesting than bankruptcy. Um, Law then becomes laxative, so Banshee laxative. Would I read? Would I read a book called Banshee laxative? I'd have to say it would depend on the reviews, but probably not. So it didn't quite feel I'd done the business there. Banshee laxative. But The Principles of Bankruptcy Law, that's quite a long title, quite a lot of letters. So I thought perhaps there are anagrams within all of these letters. So feeding all these words into an anagram generator produces a list of words, and now I felt I was getting the juice out of this book. So various words which to me resolved themselves into titles. Pulp Brain, Heat Wolf, Sky Precinct. So The Principles of Bankruptcy Law, Pulp Brain, Heat Wolf, Sky Precinct. That to me sounds like they could be titles in a cool magazine of some description. They could be story titles. So far so good. I then thought, to take that a little bit further, let's find if there are books or stories with those titles. So searching for Pulp Brain, no dice, but there is a book called Brain Pulp by an author called Tommy Lee Dean. It's on Kindle Unlimited. He's a prison-based author, so he's incarcerated in the Colorado penal system, and he's a big fan of horror pulp writing, and he writes these crazy, transgressive, short pieces of sprawling writing that he really writes well, and it totally pins you to the floor. And he's writing from his own experience, so it's sex and drugs and violence, twisted and dialed up to 11. So Tommy Lee Dean, Brain Pulp, Kindle Unlimited, worth a try. So enjoyed that. Heat Wolf to me sounded like a sort of techno thriller, the kind of Firefox type of thing. You know, the Heat Wolf, the deadliest missile ever invented. Can Nick Carter stop it falling into the wrong hands or whatever? Again, couldn't find Heat Wolf. Wolf Heat, on the other hand, is a short novel by Rodana M. in a genre which was mentioned during Carb August and which I thought I had avoided. It's a shifter romance, and it's an urban fantasy with a kind of romance element and this kind of species transformation. So I've read enough of that to get a handle on it. It's, you know, very vivid imagery. What I like about it is the way it's kind of enchanting the everyday. You know, a normal street in a normal city is full of these strange creatures, for instance, stuff like that. So yeah, Wolf Heat, okay. Not really my cup of tea, but more my cup of tea than The Principles of Bankruptcy Law. Finally, Sky Precinct. Again, not an actual title, perhaps surprisingly. It sounded to me kind of an obvious one for some kind of cops in space or whatever. There was a line from a Roman era poem, I think by Vitruvius, but it's talking about the skies precinct, so slightly different. But there is a lot of stuff about Sky Precinct on the web, because it's the name of a real world apartment block in Brisbane. I don't think it's been built yet, but it's like super high end apartment block, very luxurious, very, you know, it's been designed to the nth degree in terms of environment and all that kind of thing, and has loads of facilities within the block itself. So it's like a self-contained community for the presumably wealthy residents. And it's probably great. You know, I'll gladly accept a free apartment there in return for the exposure. But for me, it's impossible to read about that and not think of J.G. Ballard's novel High Rise. So High Rise was a, I think, late 70s, very early 80s perhaps, novel by J.G. Ballard about a luxurious high-end apartment block that's self-contained, has its own shops, schools, leisure facilities, and basically within that sealed off community, civilization breaks down. So people go feral, different groups of residents start fighting each other, and all sorts of crazy things kick off. There's a movie too. I read this ages ago. As a teenager, I like haunted the library for new J.G. Ballard to come out, and it was like a great period of Ballard's work. You had Crash, Concrete Island, High Rise, all fantastic, and I loved them because it was a sort of science fiction, but it was about the world I saw around me, not kind of imaginary stuff. So basically, I've been revisiting that. The time I've got for eye reading is quite short at the moment, so I've been doing that as ear reading with the Audible version. That's narrated by Tom Hiddleston, who's in the movie. Turns out he's a really good reader for audiobooks, and it's still a shocking story. Lots of interesting stuff, very prescient, not just because there are those kind of physical environments, but the way the groups of people seemingly out of nowhere are suddenly at odds with each other, with these divisions based on things that don't even seem real. That's, you know, it seems very much he could be talking about today sort of thing. So I'm enjoying that. So basically, with a little bit of work, I've turned the Principles of Bankruptcy Law into a kind of launch pad for some other reading. It was completely unexpected to me. So hooray! As for what I do with the physical copy, I think I could stand to make it into a notebook, but with one of those new titles on it. So rebinding it so it's called Pulp Brain, for instance, with blank pages inside. That would be pretty sweet. That's my random book of the week. I think next time I'll allow myself another one of the fictions, but we'll see. So yeah, good. That's me. Be great if you subscribe. Talking about subscribers, the numbers are really gratifying. I'm delighted to see people coming back. Great to get the comments. So yes, love all that. Great to see everybody, and see you next time. Bye.